gotta be honest with you, it just didn't give. Let's talk about it. The Art of Loving You by Natasha Bishop is a second chance romance following our heroine, Danny, who is a runway model turned social media influencer, and our MMC, Micah, who is a renowned artist. They are forced into proximity by their mentor, Tanya, who had just recently passed away. In Tanya's final will, she gives Danny and Micah instructions to throw her the memorial service she really wanted, and this sends them on a scavenger hunt across the country. Let's talk tropes. Danny and Micah met through Tanya 11 years ago and spent one magical evening together that ended in Danny sneaking out of Micah's apartment. They didn't see each other for 5 years, but when they did reconnect, they picked up right where they left off. It felt real this time. It felt like they were building towards something until Micah abruptly left Danny in New York to return home to Baltimore and never came back. Unbeknownst to Danny, he went home to care for his sister Bailey, who had just received a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Now we're in the present day. Tanya has gone on to be with him, and they've been tasked with an assignment that will bring them together once again, and this time for good. Now let's talk about our FMC and MMC. Danny is a model turned influencer who is beautiful and confident in all things except for one, and that's Micah. He really did a number on her when he goes to her in New York, and she is less than enthused to have to fulfill Tanya's final wishes with him. But she does, because her love for Tanya and her desire to carry out her final wishes is so great. Micah is a renowned painter with pieces on commission and a nice chunk of change in his back pocket. We love a man with money, amen. He knows he messed up with Danny by not communicating with her about why he had to leave. But even with her giving him the cold shoulder in the present day, he is very persistent in wanting another chance with her. He truly believes that she's his person, and he will not stop until she's back in his arms. And we love that. On this chemistry test, I'm going to have to give Danny and Micah a failing grade. Here's why. But before I go into my critiques, I want to make a disclaimer. Natasha Bishop is an amazing Black romance author, and by no means am I trying to or aiming to disparage her work. But what I learned in reading this book is that not everything is for everybody. And it doesn't take away from the author or their catalog. I especially want to make this disclaimer because it's already hard for Black authors to have their works read, to have it published. So I am not trying to take away from her bag, okay? However, art is subjective, and on this channel, I will always give you my honest opinion. Now let's get into it. The Art of Loving You is a very slow burn. Danny and Micah don't make whoopee, let alone kiss, until well over 60% of the way through the book. Which isn't an issue for me, because I love slow burns. The problem is the tension didn't properly build enough for me to make the fireworks firework. The stolen glances, the lingering touches, the staring into one another's eyes, those moments were very few and far between. Now, a lot of this I attribute to Danny being avoidant and Micah respecting her boundaries, which makes sense. She was hurt and she doesn't want to be hurt by this man again. But I feel for me to make this work, if we weren't going to get a lot of chemistry or tension between them in the present day, we needed flashback scenes real bad. We needed to see their relationship played out in the past in order to understand the tension in the present. We only received descriptions of their past and their character point of views, which ultimately made their coming together fall flat for me. By the time Micah walked in on Danny taking care of herself in their shared hotel room, well over 60% of the way through the book, it was off to the races. They went from cold to lightly joking to tussling in the paint like they're Trevante Rhodes and Kelly Rowland in Mea Culpa. Spicy? Sure. but lacking in impact. Why? Because I never got the feeling that they were sexually attracted to one another through chemistry and tension buildup. The spicy scenes read like spice because that's what the characters do at this point in the book, rather than spice because the characters are burning with passion and desire for one another. I have a hitch that Tanya is based on somebody in Natasha Bishop's real life, because she took so much care in writing about Tanya, her past, and her family, and it really was beautiful to read. Unfortunately for Tanya, I didn't really care. You need to leave! And the reason why I didn't care is because I'm here to read about Micah and Danny's love story, not Tanya and her love story with her husband and, her family and her past. I know the scavenger hunt Tanya curated was used as a vehicle to bring Danny and Micah back together. I mean, of all the mentees she has to accomplish this mission, she chooses them two and them two only, and emphasizes that they have to complete this together. The forced proximity couldn't have been better set up. The problem is this story focuses more on the scavenger hunt and Tanya's history than it did the budding love between Micah and Danny. I don't know. I just feel like instead of all these little scenes in which they discover more about Tanya, like the scene where they learned about her husband and her daughter, or they met Tanya's entire family, we could have spent that time flashing back to Danny and Micah's previous trysts. There were a lot of side characters. It was a little bit hard to keep up with, namely because I didn't care about them. Again, I'm here to read about Danny and Micah. But many of them, I feel, Tanya included, were given more attention that I think could have been more directed to the main couple. Another side character that was given a lot of attention was Bailey, Micah's sister. And Bailey was important because she motivated a lot of Micah's actions, i.e. him ghosting Danny in New York, and even him going to group therapy for caregivers of people with autoimmune diseases at Danny's recommendation. But with so much attention being given to her character instead of the main couple, I lost interest in her and anything Micah did for her. Like, yes, it shows that Micah is a good person, a caring and loving big brother. But at what cost? The truth of the matter is, The Art of Loving You didn't have enough romance for me. And that is what ultimately makes me feel sad. I may not have found The Art of Loving You to be very romantic, but it was very funny, filled with wit, humor, and pop culture references. One of my favorite moments was a scene where Danny and Micah were discussing having crushes on cartoon characters. And Micah was acting cool and bashful like he ain't never had a crush on a cartoon growing up. But once Danny started naming some popular selections, he eventually showed his hand. Now, I love this moment because it's this scene that gives Micah his nickname for Danny that we find out later on in the book he starts to use. It was really cute. And it's like a great, when you piece, it's so cute. I love it. I love the connection. And it reveals that, like me, Danny has a crush on Kovu from The Lion King too. My favorite quote in this book comes from a letter that Tanya wrote to Danny and Micah in her final will. Watching the life slowly fade from my eyes is a fate I could never put on you. I did it with my mother, and some days I remember those final moments more than I remember her life. I don't want that for you. This quote struck me because I too watched the life fade from my father's eyes. And it is a painful memory that as a family member, you want to be there with them as they transition, but it's hard to live on because that's your final memory of them. And after a while, your memories of their final moments become greater than the memories that you have of them when they were living. So while Danny and Micah were really disappointed to not have been there for Tanya during her illness and her transition, I really do respect her decision not to involve them until she was gone. It demonstrates the love and the care that she had for them. The Art of Loving You is a 3.5-star read for me. Even though I didn't love the book, I still recommend everyone reads it for themselves, especially if they're interested. Because, like I said earlier, art is subjective, and the way I feel about this book may not be how you feel about this book. And ultimately, it's still a good read. That's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, stay booked.